What's up, Cowboys Nation? Week 16 in the NFL is here. You have the 10-4 Miami Dolphins taking on the 10-4 Dallas Cowboys on Christmas Eve on the road again. This is going to be a crazy matchup, so sit back, relax. Let's talk about it.
Prescott, touchdown. Throw, look at middle, sack again by Parsons again. CeeDee Lamb, was he down? They say no for now, and he's into the end zone.
Well, welcome back to another pregame prediction video. It is week 16 in the NFL, and we got ourselves a heck of a matchup here between the Dallas Cowboys and the Miami Dolphins. If you look at stats, both these teams look very similar to each other. I mean, it looks like they're looking in a mirror when they're looking at each other and analyzing each other. But be sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because we're going to talk a whole lot in this video. 3 weeks of football left, guys. And some things happened last week, and some things are going to happen here in the next few weeks to see where the Dallas Cowboys stand. But like I said, both teams are 10-4. You talk about the gauntlet that the Dallas Cowboys have with this schedule, starting with the Eagles. They beat the Eagles. Then they had that bad loss to the Buffalo Bills, losing 31-3. Yes, I know it's 31-10, but I'm not going to count that garbage touchdown at the end. So 31-3, and now we're on the road again, facing another AFC East opponent. We beat the Jets, we beat the Patriots, we lost to the Bills. This is going to be the final matchup of that AFC East set, and we're on the road. Yes. So, and you know what? I feel like the media has come into light to talk about this road record, but if you guys have been tuning in, like I know you guys have been the entire season, you guys know every road game I have been just talking about it, and one by one the dominoes have fallen, and we're sitting at a 3-4 road record, which is disappointing. Because last season we were at 4-4 on the season, and then if you include the postseason, we won one in Tampa Bay, then we lost in San Francisco, so we were 5-5. This season, I was hoping for a slight improvement. I believe in my season prediction video, I had predicted hopefully we were going to be maybe around 6-3 or so. But in order for us to have an above 500 record, because we have 2 away games left, we got to win out. And if we don't, we're going to be 1 game under 500 when it comes to these road games. So say if we lose this one and we win the one in Washington, we're still going to be 4-5. And that doesn't look good, because this team is very talented on the at home at AT&T Stadium, but they seem to get in their own way on the road. And it's very interesting sitting down and trying to evaluate exactly what's causing that. It's mental miscues that we saw earlier in the season. But I think the difference is not as crazy as a lot of people may think it is, because you look at the Philadelphia Eagles game, obviously there were a lot of miscues in that one, and the margin for that one was very thin. I mean, if things go the other way, that changes the narrative a little bit, because if the Cowboys win in Philadelphia, then they say, we won in Philadelphia. But let's jump into a few things here, because the Cowboys are 7-0 at home. We have one more home game, the Jimmy Johnson game against the Detroit Lions next week. But the Cowboys have won in New York. That was rainy. It was, not the best of conditions. It was on turf, though. I know the whole turf versus grass conversation. Then we played in Carolina. And then we won in Los Angeles, beating the Chargers in Monday Night Football, but that was, of course, inside of a stadium. So not the best measuring marker when you're looking at trying to find some confidence in this team winning on the road, because, okay, the Giants are the Giants, right? They didn't really have a good season. The Panthers aren't really that good. And even if you look back at that game, it was a little bit tough to get some traction going offensively. And then you look at the Chargers, we're inside of a stadium, and even in that game we struggled a little bit. But if you look at the losses don't really give you a lot of confidence going into this game. And I'm your unbiased and realistic Cowboys fan. I'm going to give it to you the way I believe we should, and the way that we should see this game. And we lost in Arizona. That was on grass, if you want to get technical on that. We lost in San Francisco, got blown out in San Francisco. We lost in Philadelphia, and we lost in Buffalo. Just really tough road games. And I think we all knew this going into the season. When we looked at the season schedule when it came out in May, we looked at all those road games. We're like, man, that's tough. That's a tough road schedule. And it's definitely taking the best of the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are right where a lot of people predicted them to be, which is super unfortunate because we had hoped they would have been better. Now, on the flip side, let's talk about the Miami Dolphins, because as much as we talk about the Cowboys having dominance at home, the Dolphins are 6-1. I mean, they would have been undefeated, but they blew that game against the Tennessee Titans in the final few minutes. And then on the road, they're 4-3. So similar, but, they're finding the way. And if we're going to look at the schedule of the Miami Dolphins, but they have a tough schedule coming up here and some tough games that they're kind of in the same shoes as us where they're in a gauntlet where they're going to have to take on the Cowboys here Sunday, on Christmas Eve. Then they got to take on the Baltimore Ravens. Then they got to take on the Buffalo Bills, who are, all those teams it's not going to be easy. And trust me, I mean, this is an explosive offense. And I've been struggling with this game all the past couple of days, looking at as much stats as I could, looking for as much analysis as I could, because to me, this game is tough. I mean, these teams are so similar in the way they look. And I really, it's tough, man. But the Cowboys have not lost back-to-back games. You heard that all week. You're going to hear that all week, that the Cowboys have not lost back-to-back games dating back to, I believe, November 2021. It may have actually been when we went on the road, or it may have been the Kansas City Chiefs game that we lost, and then we came back home for Thanksgiving and we lost to the Raiders. That may have been the last time we lost back-to-back games. But I'm actually not concerned about the road element in this one as I was with Buffalo or maybe Philadelphia, because you look at where it's being played, there's no cold weather elements. There's nothing outside of our control that could affect this game or impede our ability to have success on the football field. It's at Hard Rock Stadium. It's in Florida. And Florida, Christmas in Florida is the best kind of Christmas. I mean, it's the best kind of weather. And the Cowboy fans are going to show up. They will show up for this game, and there will be good representation from Cowboys Nation here. So I am actually not worried. And that's when I saw this on the schedule. I'm like, that's actually not a bad matchup late in the season. That's really going to be tough because this is a tough football team. But in terms of how I felt last week going into Buffalo, and I'm sure you've seen the clips that I've released after from the post-game reaction. Shout out to everyone who watched that. Where I told you, I was like, man, this team is not tough. They're not built for a game in Buffalo, and they're not. But are they built for a game down in Miami? Are they built for a game at Hard Rock Stadium? I believe so. And I believe it's very neutral. It's going to be very neutral for the Cowboys when they go down, and there'll be a lot of fans, and they will feel the love. And so I think neutrality is where we're at when it comes to playing on the road on this one, and that might, make this matchup a lot more interesting than, say, if it was somewhere else in a more hostile environment. Other than that, we will jump into this game, but there's a few things that we have to get out of the way. A little bit of business, right? We got to dot our I's, cross our T's. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's talk about some playoff clinching scenarios. So last week I told you guys I felt pretty confident about the Cowboys. Whether they win or lose, they will have clinched the playoff spot. And what happened? The Dallas Cowboys clinched the playoff spot for the third straight season. And let's stop for a moment and actually appreciate that and understand how hard that is to do. I mean, man, I grew up post-Super Bowl. I'm 27 years old, and it's been 27 years since the Dallas Cowboys have won the Super Bowl, let alone been to an NFC Championship game. So the Cowboys football that I know, and this is probably where the unbiased and realism comes from, but the Cowboys I know have never won a Super Bowl. And I grew up in the dog days of going to the playoffs one season and then just completely falling off. Like, it was super rare for me as a fan growing up, seeing this team going back-to-back trips to the playoffs. So to be at this point and see this and know that we're technically getting one step closer every single season, because 2 years ago we got dropped in the wild card. Last season we got dropped in the divisional round. This is pretty special. And I know standards are higher in Dallas. I understand that. But appreciate the moment that, hey, man, week 15, we can drop a game and other people are going to help us clinch a playoff spot, because I know people are frustrated about that Buffalo game, as you should be, right? And there's no excuses being made there. But what the Dallas Cowboys did on that 5-game winning streak, winning tough games like the Seattle Seahawks game where they had to come back, drive down towards the end of the game and win that game, as well as winning a tough game against the Philadelphia Eagles, who at that point had the best record in the NFL. they don't undermine that. Like, the Cowboys took care of their business when they were supposed to and set them up for that success to be had in Week 15 for them to clinch a playoff spot. But let's jump on in. There's a couple playoff clinching scenarios. I'm not going to list all of them this time. I'm only going to list the ones that are actually relevant to the Cowboys. And the first one is the San Francisco 49ers. This is relevant because the number one seed technically is still in play for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, if you ask me, unfortunately, I'm not thinking about the number one seed anymore. I'm actually just thinking about the NFC East, and we're going to dive into that here in a few minutes. But I'm not thinking about the number one seed. Unfortunately, the 49ers have been so good. They've been able to sort of have a good position right here where they control their own destiny. And because the Cowboys dropped that game in Week 5, the 49ers have that tiebreaker, and they also have the better record at this moment at 11-3. But let's take a look at the scenario here. San Francisco clinches the number one seed, first round bye, and home field advantage with a win over the Ravens on Monday night on Christmas. Eagles lost to the New York Giants, which we're all hoping for, which I don't believe will actually happen. Check out my NFL picks. I tell you guys all my picks for this game for this week. The Dallas Cowboys losing to the Miami Dolphins, which honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, this game is a coin flip. I don't think it's going to be lopsided either way. This is going to be a dogfight, Cowboys and Dolphins. And then if the Detroit Lions lose to the Minnesota Vikings, and they're meeting each other for the first time, and they're going to play each other twice in the next 3 weeks. Excuse me. So a lot needs to happen. If you ask me, I don't think the 49ers clinch that number one seed. I don't see the Lions losing to the Vikings. I especially don't see the Eagles losing to the Giants this time. So that's how I feel about that. But that is super important to keep an eye on because number one seed is actually technically still in play for the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, something miraculous would need to happen here in the final 3 weeks for that to happen. And then you got the Miami Dolphins who are coming into Week 16 and this matchup with their first playoff clinching scenario. So they definitely have something to play for. They can clinch a playoff spot with the Miami win. So if they win this game, they are in the playoffs, and you guys can see the rest of the scenarios right there. But best believe they are looking at this AFC East division title clinching scenario. If they win, they are in, and if the Bills lose their game, then that would ultimately decide the AFC East for the Dolphins. So a win is mandatory for them. And they know that. They need to get that win, especially, to clinch an AFC East title and to be able to host a playoff game would be really big for them, especially with their home record being 6-1 and them being a really good team at home. So let's talk about this NFC East, right? Because, like I said, I'm not going to talk about the number one seed too much. And if it comes to pass, and next week, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the implications of it. But I feel like it's pretty safe in the 49ers' hands unless the Ravens win on the road in San Francisco, then things get really interesting. But let's talk about this NFC East because as we know, those dang Philadelphia Eagles, man, those Philadelphia frauds are on a 3-game losing streak, and a moment of gratitude for the Seattle Seahawks and Drew Lock for going down 92 yards under 2 minutes against that Matt Patricia defense and stealing a win from the Philadelphia Eagles. I was happy that night. It definitely made that loss in Buffalo feel a whole lot better. And that really helped us out because now, basically, here, I'm going to lay it out to you. Simplest scenario that the Dallas Cowboys can win the NFC East is if the Cowboys win out, beating the Dolphins, beating the Lions, beating the Commanders, and if the Philadelphia Eagles lose one more game, especially if it's against the New York Giants, because they play the Giants, then they play the Cardinals, then they play the Giants again. So they play the Giants twice in the next 3 weeks, and keep an eye on that Arizona Cardinals game because they have Josh Gannon, and Gannon was the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles last season. So we know the NFL. Like, players and teams get hyped up for their coach when they know that they're playing against their former team. So there it is. There's a little bit of extra motivation between that matchup right there. And my original prediction, which has kind of confined me, and I'm not going to lie, because I told you guys last week, I said I think the Cowboys are going to go 3-1, and the 49ers are going to take control of the number one seed, and the Eagles are going to go 2-2 in these next 4 games. So far, that is what we're getting right now between these 3 teams. And things can get really interesting, really fast. But let's talk about something else here. I told you the simplest scenario in which the Cowboys can clinch the NFC East. But what if that doesn't happen? What if the Cowboys and the Eagles end up with the same amount of wins and same amount of losses at the end of the season, which would technically be 13-4? What if that happens? Or maybe 12-5. Who knows? What if they end up with the same record between that? Well, we got to do a little bit of math, and we got to do a little bit of research on this, because we got to pull this up. This is your tie-breaking rules, and this is the order in which that you will go down the list if both teams in the division have the same amount of wins. So number one, head-to-head. Obviously, that was split. Philadelphia 1-1 in Philadelphia. Cowboys 1-1 in Dallas. The best win-loss percentage in games within the division. Well, at that point, the Cowboys and the Eagles would be tied if the Eagles win out. Same thing with common games. Same things with games within in the conference. Now we got to go to number 5 here. And I'm going to need a little bit of help from my friend David Hellman here, whose tweet is right here. It says, if the Cowboys and the Eagles both win out the rest of the year, they'll be tied in overall record, division record, conference record. So the next tiebreaker would be that number 5 scenario, would be the strength of victory, which is the combined win percentage of teams you beat. So currently, the Philadelphia Eagles lead that. So if it comes down to that, and if we're applying the strength of victory from today as of week 16, going into week 16, the Eagles would win the division even though we are tied. Now that's penciled in because that can change. Strength of victory can change based on the opponents that you beat, where they currently end up at the end of the year. So at the moment, if they're tied, yes, the Eagles would win, but you never know. And so that's where we're at. But just a lot of things. Unfortunately, the Cowboys don't control their own destiny. If they win out, it still does not guarantee them the NFC East title. But like I said, you cannot trust the Eagles as far as you could throw them, especially right now. But I think they're going to bounce back. I mean, could they have a 4-game losing streak? That would be pretty wild. But I don't know. We'll see. But let's go ahead and jump on into this game here. Dallas Cowboys, Miami Dolphins. This is a big game for a lot of reasons. And this is going to be a really great test. Screw that. It's not going to be a test. This is a must-win. This is a must-win for the Dallas Cowboys if they want to keep their division hopes alive. If they want to keep the hopes of their fan base alive, you got to find a way to somehow win this game. I'm going to be honest. We're going to dive into this game. We're going to look at the matchups. We're going to look at the comparisons. We're going to look at all of that. I'm going to tell you right now, I have some reservations and I have some hesitations when it comes to these two teams. I like what the Miami Dolphins are doing. Now, they match up pretty well with the Dallas Cowboys, but the Cowboys just have to find a way to win. I'm all for blowouts. I'm all for perfection, but you have to get out of Miami with the win. I don't care if it's scrappy. I don't care if it's ugly. This is a dogfight, and you're fighting for something important here. Not only pride, but you're in a division race. I know you already clinched the playoffs, but this is something that can prove a lot to a lot of people, especially the outing that you had in Buffalo, and especially with the game that you had in San Francisco back in Week 5, because a lot of people haven't forgotten about that. But let's jump on in. Cowboys defense versus this Dolphins offense. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, this is my disclaimer for every time we look at this. Stats are they are a supplement to everything that we discuss on this show. They are not concrete. They're not there to formulate a fact, just an opinion. But things they look a little bit concerning here, right? Cowboys are 6 in defense, and they took a step back against Buffalo, which was very unfortunate because outside of weather, they really just did not play well, and they got out-physicaled. Then you got the Miami Dolphins, who have the number 1 offense in the NFL. Usually, I'm a guy, right? I'm old school with football, so I'm like, defense wins championships. So if our defense was a little bit better, I'd be like, it doesn't matter. But, our defense is struggling, but their offense is coming off of one of their best games. If you take a look at their schedule here, they beat the Jets 30-0, and they bounced back really well after that abysmal loss to the Tennessee Titans at home. But let's take a look at this schedule, right? We always got to take a look at the schedule. Who have they beat? Who have they lost to? Because, like I said, they're very much in a similar situation as the Dallas Cowboys in terms of, I don't necessarily agree with this, but the idea that both these teams have not beaten someone good. Now, the Cowboys beat the Eagles, and the Eagles had the best record in the NFL at that point. Now, the Dolphins did not beat the Eagles. If you look back at, I believe it's week 7. It was a Sunday Night Football matchup, and they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles 31-17. But yeah, I mean, that sort of rhetoric, that sort of headline for the Miami Dolphins is somewhat true, because if you take a look at this list, exciting game against the Chargers in week 1, right? Then they beat the Patriots, who everyone beats the Patriots. And then they beat the Broncos 70-20, which was historic, right? And the Broncos are kind of coming into themselves, so I think that win actually carries a little bit of validity there. They got beat by the Bills. And then, you beat the Giants, the Panthers, and then you lose to the Eagles, who at that point, they were soaring. I believe they were undefeated at that point. Then you beat the Patriots. Okay, you swept the Patriots. Then you lose to the Chiefs. That one's a little bit interesting because you lose to the Chiefs, which you guys know how I feel about the Chiefs. I don't think the Chiefs are really that good. They really need a lot of help. And when the time comes, when I'm predicting that playoff picture that comes out, I think the Chiefs are going to get bounced in the first round. So I'm not really holding on to that fact. The Chiefs beat the Dolphins. Then they beat the Raiders. Then they beat the Jets. They beat the Commanders. They lost to the Titans. And then they beat the Jets. I mean, that is a cakewalk of a schedule, if you ask me, from week 11 up until week 15. They should have gone 5-0, but somehow they went up 4-1, which is still not a bad record. They're 10-4. And now they're going to get put up to the ultimate test here in the last 3 games with the Cowboys, the Ravens, and the Bills. And 2 of those are at home, and 1 of them they have to go on the road, which will be really tough. So, is there any validity to the fact of saying that they haven't beat a good team? I think so. I think they're in the same boat, and you could see that when they play a contender that is a little bit better, a little bit above average and has talent on their roster, they struggle. I mean, their offense struggles. If you look at those 4 losses, they scored 20, they scored 17, they scored 14, they scored 27. Their offense almost shuts down for a number 1 offense, and it doesn't produce as much as it does against those other teams. But that's not to say that they're not a good offense. I think this is a really great offense, and I think Mike McDaniels is a great head coach. He's a great offensive mind. Does a lot of pre-snap motion, gets his players the ball, gets his best players the ball, and this team is stacked. You got Tyreek Hill, who at this moment I'm thinking is most likely going to play. Obviously did not play last week, but it's not like they needed him. Winning 30-0. They got Jalen Waddle. They got Raheem Mostert, which shout out to Mostert. You have been carrying my fantasy team all season long. But the Cowboys just simply have to be better at the run. I actually like the Cowboys going into this game off of a loss more than if they won in Buffalo. I believe that adds a little bit more edge because I think the Cowboys have they can have a hard time maintaining success. And Mike McCarthy kind of talked about that this week. But I kind of like them coming off of this loss. Now, that does not guarantee that they will win. Let me get that out of the way. And I don't want to jinx it, but someday, some week, that stat about us losing back-to-back games, that will come to an end one day. Hopefully it's not this week. But, just because that's been true and just because this team's really good coming off of a loss and they really get back into their rhythm and their routine doesn't necessarily guarantee a win. And this is not an easy win here. This is a tough football team, a talented football team. The Miami Dolphins will not lay down and allow this. I would be surprised. Let me tell you right now, I would be surprised if the Cowboys completely blow out the Miami Dolphins, because I think the Dolphins are better than the Philadelphia Eagles, which I was really surprised that they lost. I think it was just maybe being on the road and so on. But this has to be the best defensive performance from this Dallas Cowboys defense this season if they are going to win this game, which I believe they are absolutely capable of. I'm not saying that they have to go over and beyond and reach down and find something that they didn't know existed. I think the game that they had against Philadelphia a couple weeks ago is a wonderful tape to show over and over again and show these guys, look, this is what you did against a pretty good offense. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're frauds because their defense sucks. And I know that's not the most professional term, but their defense is not really good. But their offense, the Eagles' offensive weapons, are the real deal. And this defense had the ability to stop their run, which is pretty good, stop that offensive line, which is pretty good, and shut down two wide receiver weapons, that is Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Now, of course, Tyreek Hill is on a whole nother caliber. I mean, he's an MVP level wide receiver who I believe should be mentioned, and you guys heard me talk about that before. And Jalen Waddle is a great weapon, and Raheem Mostert is a great weapon. So for the Cowboys to have a chance here, you obviously have to have a better game than you had in Buffalo. But this just may have to be a similar game and tape that you had a couple of weeks ago at home. We've seen this team do it before. We've seen this defense do it before. Now the ultimate question, can they take it on the road? And I believe this is a good opportunity to, because you're not really going into a hostile environment. It's Miami. You can win. Let's take a look at Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill has been having an incredible season, over 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, first in the NFL. Like I said, I fully expect him to play this game. I doubt he misses this. And if he does, that helps us. But, for him to miss this game, Micah and Tyreek have been going at it back and back. So I expect him to play in this game. Let's go ahead and jump into Tua Tagovailoa, because I think if you look at the stats, if you look a bit closer, there's opportunity here. And, the conversation about Tua versus Dak is better. He's the better quarterback. There's just no doubt about it. Tua has shown signs of, struggle, and we'll look at the stats, so that will support what I'm saying. I'm just not saying that. I like Tua. I think he's a great player. I think he's tough. He's a natural leader. But I would be lying if I told you that there weren't some things in his game that couldn't be exploited. And I believe that this defense, especially the pressure, especially Michael Parsons, especially Dan Quinn, if they can call the right defensive schemes and get their best players in the right position, you can really put Tua in a tough corner here when it comes to this game. But if you take a look at the stats, right, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, over 3,900 yards, leads the NFL in yards. But if we drop down, this is what I mean. You take a look at these games. Now, of course, some of these are misleading, right? Some of these games aren't because he had bad games. It's because he didn't really need to play as well as he did in other games, because they have such a great running game with Raheem Mostert. But if you look, there's kind of like this back and forth. It's like, one game's really great. One game's okay. One game's really great. And it starts back at Philadelphia. So 216 yards. I mean, one touchdown, one interception, 87.5. Okay. Then you go back up to New England. Great game. But then you play in Kansas City against a tougher defense. One touchdown, 0 interceptions, 87 record. Okay. But then you play against Las Vegas. Great. Then you play against the Jets, who they have a pretty good passing defense, and we've covered that when we played the Jets back in week 2, I believe, or week 3. Okay, you struggled. 2 interceptions, 77.5 rating. Okay, then you play Washington, who has the worst passing defense in the league. Okay, 141 rating, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Then you play Tennessee, who's a tough physical team. 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 90.5 rating. But you really didn't need that because Raheem Mostert had a good day. Then you play the Jets. Now that's a lot better of a game that you had than the first time. But there's something here that when Tua plays a more physical defense, specifically a defense that can get to the quarterback, there's some sort of struggle. Now Tua, if he wants to win this game, and if the Dolphins want to win this game, he has to overcome that, and he has to play lights out. And he's capable of that. I'm not denying that. But I'm just saying, there's a chance here that our defense can bounce back and actually have a really good game. And we need that pressure, man. We need that pressure. Now, talking about that, unbiased and realistically, I think this is going to be a tough game because the Cowboys don't really have a problem with scheme. They have an issue with personnel when it comes to their defense. And I don't believe they have enough weight at their line. And we talked about that in the film breakdown, and thank you guys so much for watching that one when we talked about the Bills and the Cowboys game. They're bringing their safeties down. So, you got Donovan Wilson, you got J-Ron Curse, you got Malik Hooker. They're bringing them down because they have a lack of linebacker depth. Unfortunately, Leighton Vander Esch is most likely out for the season, who I think this would have been such a great game for Leighton Vander Esch to be part of. I think LVE would have had a solid game, and we really just need a solid linebacker like that again. And Marquise Bell has been fantastic stepping up and stepping in. But, man, just a true tough linebacker, like Leighton Vander Esch would be perfect for this game, or would actually help, bring down some of the hesitations that I have about this game. But, move Micah around. I think this can be a really great game for DQ to bounce back with his defensive play calling, and especially Micah Parsons, who was unfortunately not as much of a factor in Buffalo. Now, I don't know if moving Micah off ball is necessarily the solution, and I know there's been a lot of ideas about that because he was drafted as a linebacker, and getting him out of the pass rush and getting him out of the edge and having him play a linebacker. I don't know, and I'm not going to argue with that because I just don't know, because the sample size of him playing at linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys in his short career, it just doesn't, there's not enough stats for me to say like, oh, he's not good, or oh, he's great. But I do know there's a lot of success in moving him around the defensive line. And that's not something that we necessarily saw last week. And I would love to see more of that because I believe you can absolutely have a great opportunity here. As I'm making this, it's Wednesday night. First injury reports came out. Now, of course, a lot of that's going to be veteran rest days. But, could there be a chance where where the offensive line for the Dolphins is not where they're not all there due to injuries? Absolutely. Well, you got to take advantage of that. And I think this could be a game where he can. But, no Malik Hooker, no Jonathan Hankins that I'm expecting. As I make this video, it's Wednesday night, like I told you with the injury report. But Hooker was not in pads. He was taking mental reps. Jonathan Hankins, Mike McCarthy said he was hard-pressed, quote unquote, to play in this game. So I'm going into this game without Hooker or Hankins. But look, we got two safeties, Jaron Kearse and Malik Hooker. And maybe you could, or not Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, who you signed to an extension. And then also Israel Mukwamu. Like, could you use him? Because we haven't seen a lot of him. I know he had a strong ending to the season last season. So seeing him, and then, everyone criticizes Mozzie Smith, the first-round draft pick. But I actually think he had a pretty strong game, and he had a sack on Josh Allen last game. So this, again, is another great rep for him. And he just has to step up. And I think, if you want my opinion about Mozzie Smith, I'm not going to be too quick to label him a bust or anything like that. I think game reps are super important, and he got a lot of them last week. And then, could this be a really good game for him? Possibly. But other than that, let's jump into our defensive predictions. I believe that the Dallas Cowboys get an interception against the Miami Dolphins in Week 16, and the man that I believe is going to pick it off is number 26, DaRon Bland. He will have an interception from Tua Tagovailoa on Sunday afternoon, Christmas Eve. Now, here's the big thing. You know who leads the Defensive Player of the Year odds? It is Micah Parsons. And I believe this late in the season, you got to have a game on your resume to seal that, to print it, to deliver it. And I believe this game, Christmas Eve, you best believe everyone's going to be watching this game. Micah Parsons was not as effective last week against the Buffalo Bills. I believe this is his Defensive Player of the Year game. I believe at the end of the season, when he does become Defensive Player of the Year, everyone will look back at the great season he had, but people will talk about this specific game. It's like, yep, that's the game he did it. That's the game we all knew he was going to be the Defensive Player of the Year. This is going to be a Micah Parsons game. You can save this video. It will happen. Number 11, the Lion, will have a great game on Christmas Eve. And then last but not least, I believe the Dallas Cowboys get 4 sacks on Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins. And those are my defensive predictions. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and hit that subscribe button for more Cowboys content, because we got a couple more games after this one, after this very pivotal game. We got the Dallas Cowboys offense versus this Dolphins defense. And let's take a look at the stats. Cowboys, 6 in offense. Obviously took a step back there, because going into the Bills week, they were 5th. Obviously didn't do too much offensively, so they take that step back. And then their defense. Do not underestimate this Miami Dolphins defense, man. They got some players. Bradley Chubb, Jalen Ramsey. Unfortunately, no Jalen Phillips, just because the injury that he sustained against the Jets on Black Friday football. But do not underestimate this. Christian Watkins, do not underestimate this defense. It is going to be tough to go up against this defense. They can get after you, and they got some ball hawks. And like I said earlier in the video, it's like looking into a mirror. It really is when you look at this. And this is going to be a tough matchup. And I think if Dak Prescott wants to take that next step, and I don't believe MVP conversations are off the table. Obviously, they've been they've been a lot more quiet this week. But if he wants to jump right back in it, I mean, imagine having a great game against a good defense like this. It's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. But this is the type of game that you grow from and you take a big leap from if you're successful in it. We cannot have the same performance that we did last week. And, if you look at my film breakdown, there were a couple of things that I saw in that game where obviously, I think the Bills were just really good at not giving the ball to Dak Prescott and not allowing our offense to catch any rhythm or pace. So with that being said, look, usually I'm a win the coin flip, let the defense go out there so we get the ball in the second half. But weirdly enough, we've seen this offense and this team really feed off the energy of the offense. I would not be opposed, especially with the outing that you had last week. If you win that coin toss, accept it and say we're taking the ball. Because you got to make a statement after that horrid game that you had against the Buffalo Bills on the road. You got to go out there and establish yourself and say, hey, I know we didn't play like we did last week, but we're still a really good offense. And it goes back to the mantra, carpe omnia. And it goes down to play calling too. I believe Mike McCarthy was not necessarily in his bag and did not have his best game as a play caller. But this team needs to get back to attack mode. They need to throw down the field. They need to attack downfield. Because if you're just dumping down in front of you, that is not making that defense fear you. You got to make the Dolphins fear you. You got to make the Dolphins think twice about blitzing, about pressuring Dak Prescott. And that's what you got to do on that first drive. If we get down to a fourth down scenario on our first drive, man, I'm going for it. It's playoff football time. You go out there and you win. You cannot be conservative. You got to go out and take this ball game. This team is capable of that. This offense is capable of that. Just will they do it? And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, no doubt about it. But the Cowboys really have to get back into their rhythm. And I'll say this, they actually ran the ball pretty well last week, believe it or not. And they've been slowly gaining traction with that and getting confidence every week. But like I said, Bradley Chubb is really someone that you want to keep an eye on. Was named Player of the Week last week. I mean, he was a monster against the Jets. 7 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and he recovered one of those fumbles. So really big player, really talented player, and our offensive line is going to have their hands full, which at the moment, it's Wednesday night, right? So I don't have too much intel on this when you guys see this video on Friday. Or I think I'm going to release it Thursday. I don't know. Anyways, Tyron Smith is on the injury report. Now, he always takes rest days, but he's on the injury report for his back. Zach Martin had that injury to his thigh, to his quad on Sunday's game. He did not practice. So this is going to be really difficult to determine this game, in my opinion, for y'all, because I don't necessarily have all the information for me, because I try to get these videos out for you in good time so I can edit it and do all that kind of stuff. But if those two guys don't go, yikes, that's going to be tough. But if they do go, obviously they're not going to be 100%, but having them there is even better than not having them there. But like I said, take your shots down the field, get back into that rhythm, be aggressive, seize everything. This offense works really well when it's in attack mode and when it's not trying to be conservative or anything like that. And I really expect this offense to bounce back and have a really solid game. I don't expect them to have a dumpster fire like they did last week. They're going to get back. They can't wait to get back. So let's jump into our offensive predictions here. I got Dak Prescott. I'll take the over on Dak Prescott, which right now is 276 yards. I believe Dak Prescott has a big game. And if you're watching this game for defense, I don't necessarily believe it's going to be a game of defense. I believe both these quarterbacks are going to go out, man. Like Tyreek's going to have a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb's going to have a touchdown. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be a showdown of offenses on Christmas Eve. So like I said, I'll take the over on Dak Prescott with 276 yards, and I'll take him with 3 touchdowns on Christmas Eve. Now with Tony Pollard, I'll take the over with 53.5 yards. I think he has a great day. He's been showing signs of that the past couple of weeks. And then next, I got CeeDee Lamb locked in for a touchdown, and I got Jake Ferguson locked in for a touchdown. And those are my offensive predictions. Once again, thank you so much for watching and hanging out for another pregame prediction video. This game's going to be tough. I am not going to lie. It's been a struggle, and I've been trying to think through it and be like, okay, what's holding me back about this game? And I think it's just kind of preconceived notions about this team and the Dallas Cowboys and showing up in big moments. because I wasn't really blinded by the Buffalo Bills game because I knew that was going to happen. But this game is definitely winnable against the Miami Dolphins. And then, when you look at their stats, but let alone if you look at their team, this is a really good team. The Miami Dolphins can go really far in the playoffs, but they kind of find themselves in a similar situation with us where they can't necessarily perform the way that they want to or should when the good teams show up, when the talented teams show up. So this is definitely a winnable game. I'll say that to begin with here with my game prediction. But for the Cowboys to win, they have to have one of their best performances of the year, especially defensively. Now, the great thing is they've done that already. They put that on tape. We know this defense is capable of that. And we know this offense is capable. But can the two be married, and can the two achieve that against a really good team on the road? I feel like we've been waiting all season long, and we've gotten pretty close. And for what I've seen from this team on the road, specifically looking at the Philadelphia Eagles game, we're a couple plays different there. And in my opinion, this is a 1% way of thinking. I think the Buffalo Bills game, and if you watch that film breakdown, I told you guys, if a couple plays go the other way, I think the outlook of that game is a lot closer than it was, but then it just rolled away from them towards the end, and that's why you got the result of 31-10. This is a tough game, and obviously the Cowboys are plagued with road issues, not just this year, but going back to last year. But this is a must-win game for the Dallas Cowboys, and I have not said that all year long. This is a must-win, not only for their division hopes, but for their hopes in themselves and the hope that they get from their fan base. This is a game that can really change the locker room. And I know they already believe in one another, and I already know they're playing for one another. But if you can get a win like this against a talented Miami Dolphins team on the road, it would elevate this team to new heights, especially because we just have not seen that. We saw the win against the Eagles, but that was at home. We knew we could play good on the home. But this is one of those things where you can cross it off the list of things that we as fans want to see this team achieve. If the Cowboys can do that, that's a big win if they can. And right now I'm going to toss it up. Not a lot of people think so. Not a lot of people think the Cowboys are going to be able to do this. And, if you look at the odds in Vegas, the Dolphins are favored. Not by much, though. It is tough. I will admit. I'm a little bit perplexed with this one more than usual. I want to say that the Dallas Cowboys win. I want to say that the Dallas Cowboys can win on the road. But I'll say this. I will not be surprised if they don't. And if for the first time in a couple years, they lose back-to-back games. And with that, they would lose division hopes with the NFC East, barring anything crazy with the Giants beating the Eagles in Week 16. But I'm going to go out on a limb. And with predictions, you got to be a little bit crazy sometimes. And you got to be a little bit audacious here. The Cowboys, let me remind everyone, they have a really good offense. And they have a really good quarterback. And they have a really good play caller with Mike McCarthy. They have shown that time and time again. And I know it was hard to see what this defense is capable of last week, but they're still a really good defense, and they have a really great defensive coordinator, and they got some ball hawks on this team, and they got some dogs on this team, and they got the future defensive player of the year on this team in Micah Parsons. So with that being said, yes, I believe Christmas Eve, this game is going to be fireworks. It's going to be explosive. Both teams are going to go back and forth. I'm expecting a shootout between Tua and Dak. And if you're a fan of defense, you may want to look away because I think this game kind of just throws defense out the window. And we're going to see this game come down to the final minute. It is going to be insane on Christmas Eve. But I believe the Dallas Cowboys win on the road. And I got the Dallas Cowboys winning 36-33 in a nail-biter, a close one against the Miami Dolphins, and they finally do it. They win on the road against a good team, and I believe the Dallas Cowboys advance to 11-4, and they win in Miami. But be sure to like and subscribe and comment down below your offense predictions, your defense predictions, and, of course, your game and score predictions. But be sure to check out all the other videos, my NFL picks, the Madden prediction video. Of course, the Madden prediction video was it was pretty insane. It went back and forth kind of like how I mentioned. But I will see you guys later on Christmas Eve after the game. And of course, here's my little disclaimer, because of course it's the holidays. It's just a football game, right? So don't let this, win or lose, don't let this ruin your night of Christmas Eve. Enjoy it with your family. Enjoy it with your friends, however you like to spend it. And of course, I will see you guys after that. Merry Christmas to each and every one of you. I'm so thankful for each and every one of you for watching these videos and sharing these videos, whether it was TikTok, Instagram, X, or YouTube. I'm super appreciative of each and every one of you, Cowboys Nation. But I will see you guys Sunday after the game. Go Cowboys.
Prescott.